Data.world. We'll be going through the tips and tricks about hackathons from people who have organized them before. We have Noah Ripner and Sharon from Data.world, and they have graciously volunteered their time to help us with this.
Awesome. Matt, do you want me to just jump straight into sharing that doc, or is there anything else you wanted to talk about first?
I don't have a whole lot to talk about for anybody watching. I've never organized a hackathon before and have no idea what I'm doing, so I'm leaning heavily on this wonderful document that Data.world has made available kind of internally to the leads. But let's just go ahead and start going through the bullet points here that are listed in the doc. I see the first one is to propose accomplishable objectives.
Yeah, I can share my screen. Hopefully you can now see your own face. And I think I shared this link already with you, but I can share it in this Hangout again. So like Matt said, Noah and I have put together this doc. Noah's participated in a lot of hackathons, and I've done a couple myself, but I am a designer and not really a developer or a data scientist, so I'm doing more of the curating than anything else. So Noah, feel free to jump in whenever you think I'm saying something wrong. Cool. But we put together this doc that has sort of these 5 bullet points and then some things to avoid, some sort of horror stories from poorly organized hackathons, and then we put together more of a template for things that either should be considered or should be written out or shared with the group before the hackathon starts. So thinking about the context, who you want to participate, how you need them to participate, and what exactly people should expect to accomplish, what is important to share with your team, and then some notes for what needs to happen at the event as opposed to beforehand. So I figured in this call, we would just go through these top 5 bullet points, and if y'all have any questions or want to dive into them further, we can. But yeah, so number 1, making sure that what you set out to accomplish in this time period is actually something that can be accomplished in that time period. So for example, Noah and I were both at the Zika hackathon a while back, and there was the idea was just, okay, let's go find a cure for Zika, but nobody had any data, nobody had any small bite-sized tasks that could be done in that day. And so it was sort of a mess because there was no understanding about what the objective of that hackathon was outside of just, let's cure Zika. So that was kind of a fail. And that leads into the second point, providing clear.
Karen, if I jump in, that's like absolutely correct. Basically, in the hackathons we've observed that didn't go as well. What ended up happening was a lot of time was spent at the hackathon itself getting situated, getting a plan of action, and getting prepared to do something. In fact, in the cases we've seen, actually getting work done was pretty much a small fraction of the total time of the hackathon. So all of the things that we've put together are based on sort of the overarching idea that with good preparation, and by first sort of assessing the participants and assessing the goals, that you can prepare ahead of time so that the time is spent on productive work. And that's sort of the general idea that these all stem from. So I just
I would imagine that because you guys have this awesome Slack channel and are communicating and it's not as much like a group of strangers just come into a room and expect to solve a problem. And these are things that have been, or at least they're stemming from channels that have been ongoing and have already had time to think about some of these things. Some of those prep steps are almost already done for you. It's going to be more about making sure that whatever we're trying to accomplish in a weekend is actually broken down to what can be done in that time frame, and how much time people should expect to spend while making it worth the project's while and for them to learn something. So if someone, I see a lot of people joining the Slack channel who say, I want to get better at R or at Python, or I want to learn this particular visualization or software or whatever it is. Matching up the tasks that the project wants to accomplish with things that people want to learn will obviously make them a lot more motivated. So the last, the last 4 here, providing clear definitions wherever possible. So this isn't to say that you have to know exactly what the group is going to do beforehand, but having some proposed ideas of like, these are 3 ways that we could go, or here are 3 different things. If you get 9 people from one channel joining the hackathon and 3 people want to do one, 3 people want to do another, having a few different ideas for ways for it to go. And that'll help too if you get blocked on one and need more data or need more time or something like that. Making resources accessible. So this is a lot of what Noah was saying about having the data there for you, knowing what sort of tools you're going to use and what kind of environments you need already set up, or making documentation for those things available and easy to use. That's a lot of what I think this group will need to do ahead of time to make it successful. And during the hackathon, checking in with the different groups, whether you're actually, so if a channel like drug spending decides to sort of break off and do 3 different smaller projects for this weekend, having the leads of drug spending go in and those different groups and making sure that they're unblocked and aren't missing something that they need. Again, having the Slack channels already set up is going to be a huge advantage here. Most hackathons are just people coming together and hoping to meet people and figure something out, but this group already is a community, so that's a huge benefit. So number 4, at the end, gathering to share output. That has been, I have seen it sometimes where only like a few groups are left because people get burnt out and sort of leave before the end, but it'll be interesting. I've never done like a weekend long hackathon like this, so I wonder if that'll be better or worse, but setting a particular time when everybody knows this is when the groups are going to share their finished projects, and setting up a hangout or whatever it is for the groups meeting up in different cities, having those streamed would be awesome. Stuff like that. I don't know how y'all want to handle it, but those are a couple of ideas. And this last one came from Noah, specifically around when in doubt, do less. So if all that happens is people come in and get familiar with D4D because they haven't done any projects yet and haven't known how to dive in, if they just show up and they figure out that this is a community they want to get even more involved in and find an area of interest where they can start being productive outside of the hackathon, that's still a win. So that would be huge. Getting more community engagement is sort of always the overall goal. So yeah, so those were the 5 basic points. And again, the rest of this is more just to read through and decide how much or how little you want to take away and actually spend the time preparing. But like Noah said, the more preparation that goes in by the leads ahead of time, and the more, if there are a couple people leading one channel or one mini project in the hackathon, the more on the same page you guys are, the better. So yeah.
Well, I think that definitely, sorry.
Yeah.
I think that definitely makes me feel better in terms of where we stand as a group. Having never participated in a hackathon before, it seems like a lot of the work to begin with is, oh, sorry. I've got
that's me. There we go.
Undo this presenting to everyone thing. Stop presenting. There we go. All right, so now it's back on me. A lot of the work, it seems like, to begin with, is setting up that infrastructure that we seem to already have. Is that right?
I would say so.
I would say that you guys are definitely a step ahead, closer to. Uh-oh. Oh no, she fell down. Sorry, one sec.
It's okay.
Oh, poor baby. Poor baby. Oh, I'm sorry.
I think what Noah is starting to say is, yes, I think y'all are sort of a step ahead of most hackathons we've seen, where a lot of in-person hackathons are more about the networking and the finding. You get a lot of people looking for jobs and looking for contacts more than actually looking to accomplish something. So I think this group has already sort of self-selected and wants to really accomplish something in this amount of time. So that's huge. So some of the things in the doc might not apply, but overall, hopefully it'll be helpful.
Look, hey, look, who's that?
Do you mind if I mute you for a second, Noah?
Oh, I thought I was muted.
It's okay. Anyway, so what was I gonna say? Glad to hear that we have at least some semblance of organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Have y'all talked at all? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
What might be some examples, if these are things you can list, like some tasks that were hackathon scoped, if you will?
I would say this. I would say that if, even in the position that Data for Democracy is in, where a lot of the problems are already fairly evolved and people are pretty knowledgeable of the work stream already, as one of the leads, I would really be inclined to spend just a little bit of time ahead of time making a list of a brainstorm of some of the projects that might be suitable for the group to work on, and break it down as much as I felt it was necessary as I dug into the individual problems in terms of how long they would take and what tools would be needed. And I would present that to the people in the group and really let them decide what they're going to work on. It may be something from that list or it may not. But what I would want to do is have that ready for people so that if they can't think of what they want to do, they'll have that as a starting point or something to fall back on. I try to add some tasks that would be appropriate for people who are just maybe showing up, and probably the people who have been involved in the process with that channel for a longer time, there would maybe be some different types of tasks available for them. So I think that would be one of the most important things, is that planning ahead of time to come up with potential tasks for the group to work on that are suitable for the time frame and for the context. And that's all time that is saved during the hackathon that can be then given to actually working and making progress, especially if it involves setting up software where you can see like just time being sucked away. So the more that you can take care of those things ahead of time, the more productive and satisfying the event will be, I think.
And a lot of these things I know that a lot of the more active projects already have GitHub issues set up for them. And so I would imagine that an issue or two might be a good starting point, like picking the top 3 issues from each project and seeing if they feel like they can be accomplished in a weekend, then you're already pretty much good to go. Those could be the top 3 work streams that you guys propose to the rest of the channel. Or if there are a few little tasks or a few little issues that make sense to group together that people could work on as one project, that would make sense too. I don't have a great understanding of sizing for all of the projects or all of the issues, but I imagine that the leads will have a good idea of what can and can't be accomplished in a weekend. Oh, you're muted, Matt.
Thank you.
No problem.
It sounds like that most of the problems that hackathons face are organization related not necessarily technical issues among team members. So if we can get over those hurdles, we should be pretty well off. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
That's a large part of the roadblocks I've seen. Another one I've seen that may or may not be relevant here is that sometimes there are people who will show up with technical skills but won't have the subject matter expertise. So there has to be a leader there who can sort of point people in the right direction and give them tasks that fit their skill set. So so I think that's where leads come into play. Because I think it's sometimes hard for people who don't have deep subject matter expertise in the topic at hand to really know what a good project is. So that's part of it.
Yes, so having a little bit of like a boilerplate for like, here's what each channel, if you have people coming in who aren't already involved in a channel, here's a little bit about each one. I think that already in some form exists either on the GitHub or on Data.World, but just making sure that all those resources are in one place, or there's at least a doc that links out to all those other docs, would be really helpful. Another thing that we've seen is websites going down during hackathons, not necessarily because of the hackathon, but we were at one recently where Socrata went down. We were at another one where people were literally passing around thumb drives because that was the only way that you could get the data. Hopefully having most of the data already on Data.World is helpful and we won't go down. But having everyone has access to the right data at the right time is another thing that has been a huge issue that we've seen in the past, because people spend a lot of time just finding the right data, finding what they're supposed to be working with, whether it's any good or not, and just getting over that, where that sort of hurdle is a big one. Unless the project is finding the data, in which case, obviously, that's where you should be spending your time.
All right, well, all this stuff has been great so far. I really appreciate you all kind of talking us through this process. And it sounds like from the advice you've given and the people that we've got behind us, we should have a good leg up on making sure this becomes a success.
Absolutely. Having all of the resources available to D4D, or that have been, or like everyone who's reached out to help, like Domino and Data.World and Mode and whoever else, having those resources. And if you need specific credentials, or if you need to get access to any of those data sets or any of those compute resources, having all of that information about how to do that in one place is probably also a good move for the leads. I know that right now, someone will just post in onboarding, like, how do I do this? Or in a project, and you guys have to keep repeating yourselves. So that would probably be a good doc to have just moving forward too.
Yeah, and a closely related idea there is, if during the process of brainstorming the tasks that you might present to the participants, if you think of anything that they might need to know ahead of time, and of course, as we said many times, any environments they need to get set up, try to get that to them ahead of time, and that'll again get you off and running and producing more quickly when the time comes for the event.
All right, perfect.
Tell people to get a babysitter if they've got a little baby.
Babies can contribute as well.
They can. Do you want to play?
You guys have some beginner-friendly tasks.
We've got, they're even tagged.
I know.
Wonderful, pretty
perfect
colors. But I think one of the things that, because this is my first time leading a project too, one of the things that's hard to kind of come to grips with is a lot of the work that gets done as a lead is not so much directly contributing, it's more making sure that nobody else has issues. And in such a space as a hackathon where time is kind of at a premium, I guess it becomes that much more important.
Yeah, which is why all that prep work is important, right?
But Matt, I think that you could definitely set it up so that during the event itself, you were working, writing code or whatever. I guess the less amount of remedial stuff, like explaining things and getting people set up in their environments or trying to figure out something to work on, happens at the event, the more time can be spent working. And like Sharon said, if you can put that information into a resource that works for itself, so you're not having to explain it over and over, then you'll be able to spend more time like actually digging in and doing some fun work instead of just managing.
Sounds like what might be an interesting experiment, assuming you can't get actual live people other than yourself to kind of walk through environment setup and those sorts of things, because obviously other people are going to be a whole lot better at testing than you yourself would be. I'm thinking maybe if you wanted to set up like a clean virtual machine work area, whatever, on your machine, and look at whatever projects you're going through for the hackathon as someone coming in new, and then see how long it takes you to build the environment and get everything set up so that you can actually start to work. That might give some insight as to where you could streamline that and what you need to document.
Yeah, I'm sure that would be really helpful.
Yeah, I want to see that document.
And just good for onboarding new people to projects, right? One of the most interesting and probably challenging things about these projects is that people come and go, and I think that'll be true in this hackathon too. So you think you've explained the setup, and then someone new comes in and has the same sort of introductory questions. So I'm sure that having that setup doc or that whatever sort of artifact from that would be really helpful just in D4D in general.
So let's take a second. Does anybody have any questions? Anybody on the call? Josh, I know you're here.
No questions here.
No questions? Okay, good. I feel like I've kind of roundabout asked the questions that I was thinking about. My takeaway so far is just make sure as much as we can to keep things organized beforehand so that there's not a lot of time wasted spinning up. Obviously, we want to celebrate wins as much as we can and kind of keep a tight loop of communication.
Yeah. Do y'all have an idea of like the time commitment that you're hoping for from people over the weekend?
I don't think there's really a lot. But I don't think there's really such thing as a minimum time commitment. We're happy to have anybody who wants to join up. I know I personally will try to be available throughout the event. I think it would probably be ideal for most of the project leads to be as available as they can be. I mean, obviously, we all have lives. This is a volunteer effort, but that's kind of the impression that I've got.
Yeah, so kind of like you've got those beginner-friendly tags and stuff like that on the existing issues. For different work streams, it might be nice to know, like, okay, this can probably be done in 4 hours if you are only committing to half a day, or this is probably a longer piece of work that 4 people could accomplish in 1 day, or whatever it is, things like that. Because I've heard I've seen a couple of comments in the Slack channels about how much, like, what's expected of me if I say, yes, I'm going to be in this hackathon or I'm going to be a part of it. So knowing that the commitment can be fairly low and you can still make an impact, I'm sure would help some people or would encourage some people to join up who might not otherwise. And the other thing that you said to Matt about celebrating wins and making sure that at the end, everybody knows what's been accomplished and what the next steps are. And a lot of hackathons are contests and are more like, okay, there's one winner and 12 t-shirts from whoever was sponsoring it. But if as a leads group, you guys come up with some sort of, I don't know, I don't feel like it needs to be a competitive structure, but some sort of showcase to show all of the cool projects that have been done in this time period and what they're going to do moving forward. I'm sure that would be cool to see. Yeah.
So we actually do have a showcase scheduled that's going to be
nice.
Afternoon of the final day, which will be Sunday. I think we've got it scheduled for 2 or 3 o'clock Eastern.
Awesome.
Can't remember exactly right now. But we definitely want to showcase all the things that people have done. And of course, there's no winner. But, you know, we're starting to talk about maybe T-shirts or mugs or little various swag items. Maybe that could be something that we could give away. Not to commit anybody to anything.
People love free stuff. So, well, we're happy to contribute anything Data.World or Sparkle themed if you would like. So, and I know Gabrielle wanted to join this call and make sure that everyone knows that we're more than willing to help however we can. And whether that includes buying beers or pizza for people who are getting together in real life, or whatever to make the hackathon go smoother, we're here for you guys. So just let us know how we can help.
Okay. That actually brings to mind something that I hadn't thought about because I guess just my own personal case, like in Nashville, there's not a whole lot of people around, so we don't have that opportunity for a meetup really. But I know there are a couple of areas that are having live meetups. Do you have any advice for those people?
I don't really have anything that's not already in that doc. Noah, do you have anything in particular that would be helpful for people who are meeting up?
I mean, the general ideas are the same, I think. You know, of course, I'm assuming that they're going to make sure that they, you know, just like the basic necessities of a physical space and internet and all of that is taken care of. But I can't think of anything that isn't particularly obvious. But yeah, of course, yeah, I'm just assuming that they've planned out the needs for their physical space, but I think everything else pretty much follows the same pattern.
Okay. Internet, beer, pizza, and more emphasis on the introductions. And if they're making sure that people know if there's a specific time that I know in Austin, we're either going to have it at our office or at a space downtown, and knowing where to go and when that space will be available, since this is a con, or I think it might even be longer than that. So people don't show up when there's no one there. Those would be important logistical things.
Yeah, I think probably something that we might not have considered, or people in various areas might not have considered, is setting a start time. That seems like something that would be important. I don't know if we have a global start time per se, but I think definitely within projects, people should probably get together and agree on a time everybody's going to jump on, or at least let people know, hey, I'm going to be available this time.
Yeah. And so another thing with the ones, that's a great point. And another thing with the ones people who are meeting up, knowing, or it might, you and I actually were talking about this, that it might end up that people aren't going to work on like drug spending or election transparency or one of the channels. It might end up being more local projects, and that could be that could spur some new projects too. So that could be an interesting sort of way to go about forming those in-person meetups, whether there's not only the channels that already exist, but forming hackathon sort of mini groups or work streams around different tools or different, so like maybe having a Python one or an R one or something for Assemble or any of those things. I don't know if there are also project leads for those, I would imagine not as much, but if people want to just get better at certain tools and do whatever project makes sense for those tools, that would be a good thing to coordinate ahead of time.
That's a good idea.
And something else that just occurred to me while you were talking about all that, sort of as a way to keep it light, have you all seen anything done like a midday break or similar that kind of gets people engaged, but not so much coding and thinking and being hard at work?
Yeah, it's the ones that I've seen have been mostly around here, come eat some food, which is always a good break. But at a couple of the hackathons that I've been to, as sort of a midway point, you stop and you eat and you sort of do a little bit more networking. And I've seen ones where people will go up and say like, okay, we're at the halfway point. Here's what the groups that have formed are, and here's what they're doing and what they plan or like they hope to have accomplished by the time we do our showcase. And that way, specifically for this hackathon, it might be a good way, sort of a second starting point for people who weren't there at the beginning to get to know the projects and say like, oh, that sounds like my thing more than this other one, and really get started.
Yeah, so kind of like a halftime show of sorts.
Yeah. Since this is like, it starts on Friday, right? It doesn't even start on Saturday, right?
Yeah, I think it may start on a Friday, but I'd have to check.
Yeah, so it might be good to schedule a couple of like check-ins like that. So a kickoff and then end of day Friday, kickoff Saturday morning, sort of Saturday afternoon, then Sunday as the final showcase. Might be good to have a few of those check-ins since it's such a long hackathon and things will inevitably be changing over that time period.
Yeah, and I think that doubly makes sense because I expect that people will be joining and leaving on different days.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, this is actually, we're kind of early because I think there was an hour scheduled for this, but I don't know that I have any more questions. Do you all have any final remarks?
Not really. Hopefully that doc is helpful. And I think most of the leads are already in our DW feedback channel. Feel free to add anybody who's not in there. And I'm on there pretty much all the time. So if you guys have more questions, that's where you can find me. And I will bug the rest of our team for answers if I don't have them.
We appreciate you bugging your teammates for us.
No problem.
Cool. That's about all I've got too. Yeah, I think if you just prepare ahead of time, everything's going to go well.
All right. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
I hope that this call for whoever is watching later has been of use and that it helps us plan a great hackathon. Keep being awesome to everybody and looking forward to the hackathon. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Sweet.
Thanks.
Thanks, Matt.